Hello everyone, I'm Loon and welcome to my channel. This video aims to share information about the country that currently ranks as the third smallest territory on Earth, occupying the 193rd position among the 195 countries worldwide. The Republic of Nauru, commonly known as Nauru, is a small oval-shaped coral island, located about 42 kilometers south of the equator in the western Pacific Ocean. Nauru has a land area of 21.3 square kilometers, making it the world's smallest island nation, republic, and the third smallest country in the world. Approximately 3,000 years ago, Micronesian and Polynesian people had settled on Nauru, with 12 tribes in total. The 12-pointed star on the national flag represents these 12 tribes. In 1798, British Captain John Fern arrived in Nauru on the HMS Hunter, naming the island Pleasant Island, and initiating the history of Western interaction with Nauru. The first successful European settler on the island was the British individual William Harris. In 1842, at the age of 29, he arrived on the island and became enchanted with the local culture, especially a Nauruan woman, leading him to stay and become the first European resident to settle there. In the late 19th century, as Germany expanded its presence in the South Pacific, Nauru became a German colony, starting in 1888. At that time, Germany didn't place much value on Nauru, considering it to have little of worth apart from coconuts. However, in 1900, employees of the British Phosphate Mine Company accidentally discovered phosphate rock on a rock on the island, which changed the fate of the island. During World War I, Nauru was occupied by Australia, and from 1919, it was administered as a League of Nations mandate by the British, Australian, and New Zealand governments, with Australia representing the three nations. In World War II, as a form of retaliation, German forces sank 4 nearby ships and shelled the phosphate facilities on the island. In 1942, Japanese forces bombed Nauru, causing the residents to flee to Australia to avoid potential Japanese massacre. On August 26, 1942, Japanese forces occupied the island, making it a tactical support base for the Japanese in the South Pacific. They stationed 2,000 troops on the island and brought in a significant number of Japanese and Korean. After World War II, Nauru was administered by Australia, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand as a United Nations Trust territory. However, these administering powers primarily focused on phosphate mining on the island, and didn't adequately prioritize the welfare of the Nauruan people. Over time, the Nauruans became increasingly dissatisfied with Australian rule, especially regarding the exploitation of phosphate resources. They worked towards independence and regaining control over the mining rights. In response to international pressure, the Australian government ultimately had to relinquish its control over Nauru. On January 31, 1968, Nauru formally declared its independence as the Republic of Nauru, with Hammer de Robert as its first president. In November of the same year, Nauru became a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. In 1999, Nauru also became a member of the United Nations. After gaining independence from Australia in 1968, the people of Nauru gained full control over phosphate mining, which led to immense wealth for the island's residents. In 1975, Nauru's per capita GDP was more than 5 times that of the United States at the time. This made Nauru one of the wealthiest nations in the world, often referred to as the Kuwait of the Pacific. During that period, most of the people's daily expenses, except for food, were virtually free. Housing, transportation, electricity, telecommunications, schools, healthcare, all were provided free of charge, and there was no income tax. There were different theories about the formation of Nauru's phosphate deposits, with some suggesting it was bird droppings, and others saying it resulted from the sedimentation of marine microorganisms on the seafloor millions of years ago. Regardless of its origins, phosphates was primarily used for fertilizer production. Starting in 1990, the phosphate production on the island sharply declined, and the people of Nauru suddenly realized that their seemingly secure way of life was built on a fragile foundation. Because of the lack of long-term investment in human resources and infrastructure, their options were limited, and their primary choice was to keep digging. By 2005, Nauru had gone from being considered the Kuwait of the Pacific in terms of economic development to the level of a third-world undeveloped country. the Nauruan government made extensive efforts to revitalize the economy, including managing a sovereign wealth fund, engaging in money laundering, selling passports, receiving refugees, and seeking diplomatic recognition in exchange for economic aid. However, mismanagement and poor decision-making hindered economic progress. Since 2001, Nauruan passports have been blacklisted by the United States for being associated with terrorism and international money laundering. Presently, Nauru primarily sustains its economy through two main sources of income: by hosting refugees in exchange for revenue, and by using its diplomatic influence to voice concerns on international platforms in exchange for economic assistance. Nauru also holds the unfortunate record of having one of the world's highest obesity rates. Due to dietary habits and restrictions, over 90% of the population has a body mass index, BMI, higher than the global average, with approximately 97% of men and 93% of women classified as overweight. Nauru is indeed a remote and isolated island in the middle of the ocean. While people have lived on the island for thousands of years, it wasn't until the 18th century that individuals from other countries settled there. Throughout the 19th century, Nauru was successively occupied by Germany, Australia, and Japan due to its strategic location. Natural resources on the island were jointly managed by foreign nations. Because of this history, Nauru retains a strong indigenous culture and shows traces of modern wars, but lacks the blend of ethnicities and other characteristics seen in nations with more complex histories. Nauru is a unique place, with its own distinct character, and it might be of interest to those who enjoy exploring remote island nations. This video segment concludes here. If you enjoy the content shared on this channel, please like, subscribe, and share. Feel free to leave comments below to let me know what topics you'd like me to cover.